Episode 121, The Masked Attacker. Let me go! Seeing Henry's face looking down at her, Vivian was so scared that she closed her eyes and struggled crazily to free herself from his arms. And it wasn't only her. The four waitresses were also struggling fiercely to get away from Henry's friends. The scene was chaotic and everyone watching was horrified. "Damn it, let go!" shouted Vivian. The boyfriends of the four girls who had been serving drinks were also present. Naturally, they were enraged when they saw their girlfriends being manhandled. And the rest of the boys watching were all hot-blooded men in their 20s. Of course, they all felt indignant in being ordered around by these bullies. Without any warning, a few guys bellowed and rushed toward Henry and his friends. Henry and the others were shocked and immediately let go of the women that they were holding. As some young guys rushed toward Henry, his four friends stood in front of him, yelling at them and hoping to scare them off. Suddenly, bottles, chairs, and stools started raining down on them, and they were unable to fight back. Henry's friends screamed as they were getting pummeled by the flying furniture. They only managed to hit the young guys a couple of times. A few minutes later, Henry's friends conceded that they couldn't protect him. All they could do was squat on the ground with their arms over their heads to protect themselves. "Beat up their leader," shouted one of the young guys. His friend agreed. "We need to drag these four pieces of trash out of the way so we can get the one hiding at the back." The youngsters looked like they wanted to kill Henry. Henry was terrified as he sat hugging his head and shouting, "Slayer, save me!" The youngsters didn't care who this man was. They had no interest in understanding anything about him. They just knew they wanted to get their revenge. A fist had already landed on his head. Then two of the young guys suddenly let out cries of pain. The others turned around and saw that their friends were lying on the ground. Then others started falling. Before they could work out what was happening, half of them were lying out on the floor. It was the little man in the mask. This masked aggressor seemed to be some sort of martial arts expert who knew exactly what he was doing. Each time he attacked someone, he would either kick their knee out first, or he would attack so quickly that they weren't able to dodge him or fight back. He was like an unstoppable ninja. Less than 2 minutes later, not a single young man was still fighting. Some were still lying on the ground moaning. Others were not hurt, but they were too in awe of this man to keep fighting. They watched him meekly, some holding their injuries. No one dared to take another step forward. Slayer walked to Henry's side and said, "Boss?" Everyone was surprised to hear him address him in this way. "Are you stupid? Your boss has been beaten up, yet you're just standing there watching the show? Damn you!" Henry shouted at him and thumped his head as hard as he could. Slayer lowered his head. He was not tall to begin with, but now he looked even smaller. He had defeated more than 10 people single-handedly. The onlookers were surprised to witness such a strong person behaving so subserviently in front of Henry. All this time, Alex had been observing Slayer from the back of the crowd. He saw that he was dressed in fashionable but worn clothes that had been given to him by Henry. His outfit consisted of a brown suit jacket, which looked to be a few years old, a pair of blue jeans, and a pair of white sneakers. These three pieces of clothing didn't match at all, and the fact that Slayer was wearing a white mask only added to his odd appearance. Alex also noticed that his hands were yellow, and his nails were long and dirty. He had a crew cut, and 2 bald patches were visible on his head, giving the impression that he was sick. What kind of person is he? Alex wondered. Everyone there had the same question on their minds. Henry looked down at Slayer and ordered loudly, "I'll let you off this time. You can be useful at crucial moments. Remember, if you ever see me in danger, you must immediately come out and protect me. Whoever hits me must be beaten to death. Do you understand?" "Understood," Slayer answered timidly. When the others heard his meek voice, it was hard for them to imagine that he was the same violent man that they had just witnessed. Henry looked at the young people eyeing him nervously, and he shouted arrogantly, "You bunch of losers! You want to take me on again? Just try try it." Seeing that they were all scared of him, he walked over to them and slapped 2 of the young men twice on their faces. He bragged confidently, "You're nothing but a bunch of cowards. If any of you dares to interfere with my business again, don't think I'll let you off so lightly. I might even beat you to death. Come out if you're not afraid of death. Come on then." The young men had heard many stories about people being killed in this type of situation, and they didn't doubt that this angry man meant what he said. He was an arrogant person from a powerful family. He also had the ruthless masked attacker under his command, who clearly would stop at nothing to please his employer. None of them dared to challenge him. Seeing that no one dared to cross him, Henry shifted his gaze to Vivian, who shuddered and took a step back. Henry walked toward her with a sinister smile. Everyone watching could guess his intentions, but no one dared to intervene. They were ashamed and lowered their heads, as if they would feel better if they couldn't see what was happening in front of them. Vivian leaned against a table. Her hand was resting on it as she looked at Henry in fear. Her mind was trying to think of a way to solve the problem. But as he walked up to her smiling wickedly, only panic remained in her mind. Watching the scene, Alex was also struggling to work out what he should do. If he tried to intervene now, he would be putting himself at risk. He had hurt Henry in the past and had hindered his relationship with Kelly. He knew that he couldn't battle both him and the guy in the mask. Henry walked over to Vivian. He grabbed her hands and, looking at her terrified face with a cruel smile, he said, "This table may not be as soft as a bed, but the height is perfect. Do you want to get yourself up on it, or shall I put you there?" As he grabbed her around the waist and carried her to the table, Vivian screamed out in terror. "Let me go! Help! Save me!" "Come on, baby," Henry said in mock adoration. He lifted Vivian onto the table and started to take off her clothes. Suddenly, a figure flew out from the crowd, and pushing himself off the shoulders of the 2 people next to him, leapt high into the air. Looking like Bruce Lee, he kicked Henry on the back of the head. Henry screamed in pain and fell to the ground. Vivian also fell off the table on the floor. "Vivian, are you okay?" her savior asked. It was Alex. When he had seen that she was going to be molested by Henry, he had rushed out of the crowd without stopping to worry about the consequences. After kicking Henry, he went straight over to help Vivian up and check if she was all right. "I'm fine," Vivian replied. She only had a small injury to her arm. She and Alex both looked fearfully at Henry. He had fallen heavily onto the ground when Alex kicked him. He got up with a groan, and a clear shoe print was evident on his face. He frowned from the pain, and as he looked around him, he saw that it was Alex who had kicked him. His friends instantly recognized Alex and spoke to Henry excitedly. One said to him, "Henry, that's the same guy from the other day." "Yes, it's the same one," agreed another. "You little shit, so it's you," Henry said angrily. He gave Alex a look of pure hatred. He, Henry, had never been assaulted twice by the same person like this. "Slayer?" he roared, still glaring at Alex. "Yes, sir," Slayer replied as he quickly walked to Henry's side. "Are you stupid?" He cursed and hit Slayer's head hard, which made his arm start hurting. "Ouch!" the little man screamed. "You're supposed to be protecting me. If you don't start doing your job, you better be scared for your own life. Do you understand?" "Understood, sir," Slayer answered meekly. "Now beat him up. Don't be afraid. My family will get you out of any trouble." He took a dagger from one of his friends and handed it to Slayer. They all carried daggers, which they used to scare people with. "Go." He pointed at Alex and pushed Slayer toward him. Slayer unsheathed the dagger. His eyes peeked out from his mask and stared at Alex as he slowly approached him. The others in the room were panicking. The girls were clenching their fists and the men were anxiously wondering what to do. They all wanted to help Alex, but the dagger in Slayer's hand stopped them from getting involved. Vivian was frightened. She held Alex's arm tightly and asked him helplessly, "What should I do?" Alex didn't say anything as he stared at Slayer, who was walking over. He slowly moved Vivian behind him. "What are you doing?" Vivian asked him anxiously. Alex simply moved her out of the way. She wanted to go back to try and help him, but someone else stopped her. Alex looked at Slayer with respect for his skill, but also with pity. He pitied him because he couldn't understand why he would want to be a lackey for someone as evil as Henry. When Slayer was 2 yards away from him, Alex noticed his eyes freeze for a moment. Alex suddenly thrust his hand toward him from behind. In his hand, he also held a knife. Before rushing out in Vivian's defense, Alex had slipped behind the bar looking for a weapon with which to confront her assailants. He was aware of Slayer's martial arts skills and knew that when he attacked him, his opponent would not hold back at all. Slayer tried to dodge his attack, but Alex was too fast. He inflicted a deep wound to Slayer's shoulder, which started bleeding profusely. The dagger in his hand fell to the ground with a clanging sound.